And we are live, I think. Please let me know if you can see me and hear me. Just type in the chat window if you can see me, and hopefully it's working. I'll just wait for you to say something. Okay, great. So I already have information that everybody can see me. So let me first of all introduce myself for those of you who don't know me. Wait, let me just do something here, which is turn off my sound. I was hearing myself speak, and that's not nice. So for those of you who don't know me yet, I am Susanna, and I am a Portuguese teacher, Portuguese for foreigners or for foreign speakers. And I'm going to be talking to you today a little bit about the Portuguese language in general. So I'll give you an idea of how the language works. So this is good for you if you are a beginner. I don't think you will leave this session being able to speak or communicate. That's not really the purpose. But I think sometimes it's useful to just have an idea of how the language works, what things you have to consider when you're starting learning. How is the sentence structure? Are there genders? Are there plurals? How do they work? So that type of basic thing. So if you have any questions in the meantime, you can type them, and if I don't see them immediately, I will be sure to look at them during the session or after, and I will answer these questions for you. So I found this type of introduction to a language really useful to me when I started learning Russian. I then decided that I was going to do this every time I start learning a language, just reading a little bit about it, how it works, how many tenses are there. I'm not really going to be talking too much about that today, but so that you know that I also found this useful for myself when I started to learn Russian specifically. So I will use the text as a starting point for the several aspects I want to talk to you about. But like I said, if you have questions about any other similar structures or anything that you already know, but you're not really sure if it works the same way, you can also ask. If you're a true beginner, I mean, if you're really starting to learn the language just yet, then it also depends what is your native language, because, for example, if you speak a Romance language, some of these structures will seem familiar to you and some of these grammatical aspects also. But also, giving my example, when I started to learn Italian, obviously I could recognize a lot of similarities, but some things are really similar, but other not that much, and it was good for me to also have this overview of the language and what type of things I can relate to Portuguese and what I can't. Muito bem. So I asked you guys where you come from, and if you are beginners, let me just see what we have here. Okay, so we have United States, we have Kentucky, USA, and beginner. And I think that's all for now, but just if you haven't yet, just introduce yourself. You don't have to say a lot about yourself, but where you come from, and if you are a really beginner, and if there is anything in particular you would like me to focus on today. And we have someone from Serbia also. Hello. Okay, so let me get started. I will disappear now. I will share my screen with you and where you will see the text that I'm going to be talking to you about, but I will be back at the end. Então, aqui. So hopefully now you will be seeing the same screen I am seeing here. And what I have here basically is not really a complex text, but it's just a group of basic sentences that include some of the aspects I'm going to be talking to you about today. This small text basically introduces a person, and that's the boy sitting there. And he's going to be talking a little bit about himself and saying where he's from, what he studies, what he has. Is going to be characterizing also a book, where he's at, what he's doing, and also other different structures at the end. So first of all, I'm going to start by reading each sentence and giving you the translation. Then I'll go step by step and cover each sentence independently, and then we will start talking about what brought you here today. Eu sou o Pedro. I am Pedro. That's his name. Sou português e sou estudante de inglês. Sou português, I am Portuguese, that's his nationality, e sou estudante de inglês, and I study English. So I'm a student of English. Tenho livro de inglês. I have an English book, or a book of English. O livro é bom, grande e castanho. The book is good, big and brown. Estou em casa, I am at home, and estou a estudar inglês. I am studying English. Eu sei falar inglês muito bem. I know how to speak English very well. Também quero aprender francês. I also want to learn French. And the last one, amanhã vou comprar livro de francês. Tomorrow I am going to buy a French book, or a book of French. So these are the 9 sentences we have here. Let's start going one by one. Let's start with the first one. Eu sou o Pedro. I am Pedro. Here you have the basic, simple sentence. Starting with the personal pronoun, eu, I, and then verb, and then the object, whatever comes next. So about the personal pronoun, what I want to talk to you about is that obviously there are several, like in English and in any other language. What I want to talk about the personal pronoun is that usually in Portuguese, when you are still identifying who is talking or who you are talking about, then you use the personal pronoun. After that, and you will see that in the next sentences, the personal pronoun disappears. So it's a language where, and I'm not speaking specifically about Brazilian Portuguese here because there are some differences in this case. In European Portuguese, the personal pronoun tends to disappear almost from the sentence, most of the times, once the person is already identified before. So this is the first sentence, you have the personal pronoun. I'm just going to identify really quick what the other personal pronouns are. So this is I. Tu, you, that's informal. So speaking to family, speaking to friends, co-workers, with whom you get along really well. Ele, he, ela. Pay attention to the pronunciation here. Ele, ela, ele, ela. Nós, we. Vocês, you, plural. And eles, they, masculine, or a group of men and women. And then elas, they, feminine. What is missing from this group here is the formal treatment. In terms of verb conjugation, that corresponds to this third person singular here. And usually what I will just tell you today is that usually you don't have a personal pronoun for this. Or what I mean is you omit the personal pronoun if you're speaking to someone formally. Or you use o senhor, a senhora. O senhor for a man, a senhora for a woman. But you can say these sentences in a formal way, omitting these pronouns also. Okay, these are the personal pronouns. This is the subject of the sentence, so this is the person performing the action. In this case, the person is saying who the person is. after the personal pronoun comes the verb. What I want to talk to you a little bit about now is about this verb. That's the verb ser, to be. And this verb refers to permanent characteristics. So my name, for example, how I am tall, I look good, and nationality, for example, also profession. So it does not mean that these things cannot change. I mean, I can change my profession, but they are more permanent than other situations that tend to be more momentary. For example, I am feeling sick or I am sick. That uses a different verb. So the name in this case uses this verb because it's a permanent characteristic. And about the sentence, what I still want to mention here is that names, it can be Pedro in this case, they always have the article preceding them. In this case, Pedro is a man, so it has the masculine article. I will talk to you a little bit more about articles in a moment, but it's important that you memorize that, unlike Brazilian Portuguese sometimes, where you can drop this article before the name, this does not happen in Portuguese. So you have to always remember to include o Pedro, in this case Pedro, including o for masculine name and for a feminine name. For example, Ana. Eu sou a Ana. I am Ana. So, unlike English, in this case, you always have to have the article preceding the name. About the verb, I just want to refer to you that you have regular verbs and irregular verbs. This is an irregular verb. The difference between the two is that regular verbs follow certain rules. So there is a rule on how to conjugate a regular verb. And if you know that that verb is regular, then you always conjugate each verb according to that rule. When it's irregular, you have to learn each verb independently. And ser is an irregular verb. The verb is conjugated in the present here. So not really like all languages, but like at least Romance languages, the verb is conjugated in different tenses. So in this case, it's the present, but then you also have verbs in the future, or tenses in the future, tenses in the past, and compound tenses. So a lot of different possibilities in this case. But when you say I am Ana, like in English, you are using the present. Muito bem. So let's see. Questions so far? Okay, I have other people here. Beginner from Russia, hola. Australia, Turkey, Greece. The whole world is here today. Okay, great. So let's move on. If you happen to think of a question in the meantime about this, then feel free to ask. The second sentence. Sou português e sou estudante de inglês. Again, if you recognize, this is the same verb we used in the other sentence, and we are here talking about nationality. This is the Portuguese flag. And we are talking about what the person does. In this case, he's a student, but it can be a profession, so also a permanent characteristic. We could say here that he's an engineer, he's a teacher, it doesn't really matter, so the verb is always ser. Ser, ser. I can change my nationality, sure I can, but that's not really what happens in most situations, so you just keep your own. Nationality you're born with, usually that's the one you keep. So, sou português, sou estudante de inglês. Again, like I said, here, eu is already gone. I mean, you could leave it in. You could continue and say, eu sou português e eu sou estudante de inglês. That wouldn't be wrong, but it doesn't sound so good. And what happens usually, naturally, when people are speaking is that they drop this personal pronoun. We can already see in the conjugation who you are talking about, because conjugations are different from person to person. So you know, if you know this conjugation, obviously, but I'm telling you, you know that this conjugation here refers to the first person, eu. Now, about these words here, português, estudante, one of the most important things in Portuguese you need to know is that you have two genders. So words, nouns, for example, everything you define with the article, like in English, the house, the sofa, the car, the person, everything that has the, that's a noun. And in Portuguese, nouns have two genders. They are either masculine or feminine. Masculino, feminino. And what happens is that, for example, like in this case, a Portuguese, a nationality, it depends, it can be considered a noun or an adjective, but in this case, nouns, adjectives, articles, basically every word is going to change according to gender and according to number, if it's singular or plural. In this case here, Português, it's masculine because it's a nationality from a man or from a boy, and it's singular because it refers only to one person. But if you wanted to say that I am Ana, eu sou a Ana, and I am Portuguese, eu sou portuguesa, you would have the A at the end. What you have usually to differentiate between masculine and feminine is the O at the end, or O in English, and A at the end for feminine. This would be masculine, this would be feminine. This is what you usually have at the end of, not always, but I'm just saying usually that's what you have at the end of words that identify whether the word is masculine or feminine or refers to a masculine or feminine person. But as you can see here with Portuguese, that's not always the case. So some situations are going to be, let's call them special cases. And Português is one of them. For example, in terms of nationalities, let me give you one that would end in O. Angolano. He's from Angola, he's Angolano. This one ends in O, he's a man. Angolana, she's from Angola, she's a woman, ends with A. So this is the most common situation. Like you see here with Português, there are also other cases, but I will talk to you a little bit about this further ahead again. Then you also have other words that you do not see the difference when they refer to a masculine person or a feminine person. And in this case, estudante is one of the situations. If he's a man and he's a student, ele é estudante. So let's continue here with the masculine, here with the feminine. Estudante. And if I am a woman and I am a student, I am also student. So some words do not change in terms of form when they refer to masculine or feminine, and you can see them, especially the ones ending with E or E in English. These ones are uniform, so they do not change according to gender. The important here for you to know at this point is that there are two genders, masculine and feminine, and that these genders will influence the words characterizing that noun or that person. Muito bem. Anyone has any questions so far? Obviously, like I said, this is not supposed to be a complete course. I mean, it's impossible to tell you everything there is to tell, and it's impossible for you to grasp everything right now. But if you think of anything, just let me know. Muito bem. So let's continue. Third sentence. We have here now the second verb I want to mention to you today. I'm going to mention three, and these are basically the three basic verbs with which you would start learning Portuguese, and that's the verb to have, ter. All three verbs I'm mentioning today are irregular. Usually the most common verbs tend to be irregular, and this is the case also with these verbs today. This is the verb ter, to have. Again, here, the personal pronoun eu is gone. I can see that it refers to the first person by looking at the ending, but for that you need to know the conjugations, but basically this is how it works. And then I have a book of English, or an English book. So like I said, nouns, they have two genders. Usually masculine ends in O, feminine ends in A. If you look at livro, book, you can probably already guess that it's masculine because it ends in O. This will not always be the case, so sometimes it can be a little bit tricky. For example, dia, day, ends in A, but it's masculine. But I would say maybe 80% or even more, maybe 90% of cases, this is what you're going to have. Ends in O, so it's masculine. Now what I want to talk to you about here is these words preceding the nouns. So book is the noun, and then you have an identifier here before it. You will have two different types of identifiers, same as in English. For example, when I tell you, I have a book and the book is good. So you have in English and or a and the. This is the same. It works exactly the same as in English. So first you are identifying with what it's called an indefinite article. First you are identifying that noun as belonging to a group of all the books in the world. This is one of them. And then once you start to characterize that book, this book is like this or the book is like that, then you switch to the definite article. What you have here is the indefinite. And like I said, basically what you always have to pay attention to is that there are two genders, and you'll always have singular and plural also. So looking at indefinites, you have for masculine, singular, uma, again here you add a for feminine, and then you have the plurals. Uns, the M switches to N in this case, that's masculine plural, and then umas, that's feminine plural. So let's just try to build this sentence with each of these options. Tenho livro de inglês. Tenho uma, let's say, caneta, a pen, that's always the example I think of. Uma caneta. And then plural, tenho uns livros. I have books. Tenho umas canetas. I have pens. What happens usually with plural is that in most cases you tend to omit or drop the article, the indefinite article in plural. Like in English, you say I have books. You could say I have some books, but that would be a different word. So generally speaking, in this case, when you're just identifying I have this in plural, then you usually drop the indefinite article. So names of people always preceded by article, nouns always preceded by article. Let me see if anyone has questions. Oh, thank you so much. Someone is saying I'm a wonderful professor. That's good to hear. Wait, this is not over yet. Wait until the end for you to say that. So let's continue. Next sentence. Now, like I mentioned, we first identified the book in the group of all books in the world. Now we are going to describe this book. So you see here that behind book, the word book, the article changes to the definite article. Changes to u. That's the same word you saw before the word Pedro, the name Pedro in the first sentence. So that would be in English, the book. Also, you know, always two genders. So always masculine and plural options, always singular and plural options. These are the options you have. Uma, that's the indefinite, you already know, transforms into a. And then you have also plurals, of course. The books are good, os, and the pens are good, as. So now you can build this sentence with these options. Let's try it. O livro é bom, grande e castanho. The book is good, big and brown. A caneta, let's use the pen again. Let me draw the pen. Caneta. A caneta é boa, grande e castanha. Okay, so probably you already noticed that there are differences in the other words. So once you change to feminine, the noun to feminine, basically everything will have to change accordingly. The verb doesn't change because it's still referring to a singular object in the third person. This is also the verb ser, because it's referring to permanent characteristics. The book is good, it's not going to change. It's big, it's going to remain big, and it's brown. So let's look at these words here. These are adjectives. They are going to characterize the noun. And we have three of them. We have good, big, and brown. And all are going to change differently. Let's first look at brown. Let's change it to feminine. Castanha. So here you have the regular ending. Switches from O to A. Then you have big, grande. If you remember what I mentioned before about estudante, it ends with E. It's going to remain the same in feminine, grande. And bom, boa. This you could call an irregular adjective, so it changes form completely. Some nouns also change form completely. For example, when you are talking about nouns that refer to actions or, for example, professions performed by men and women. For example, let's say teacher, professor, professora. So this is a profession, can be performed by a man or a woman, so you change endings. So you see also the masculine here does not end with the regular O. Masculines also can end with er. But you have two different forms for masculine and feminine, but based on the same word. Then you have nouns that change completely. For example, homem, man, and woman, mulher. So in this case, you have two different words, and these are nouns referring to activities performed by men and women, or nouns that refer to gender-specific situations, like being a man and woman. And then you have those that are uniform, like client, also ends with e. You see again, it does not change, remains the same. When you have cliente, the only way to identify if you are talking about a man or a woman is with the article. Cliente, uma cliente. So the article changes according to gender, but the noun itself doesn't, in this case, because it ends with e. Okay, so you have, I'm not going to mention every possibility in terms of transformations between masculines and feminines now, but I think these cover the most options. So ones ending in e do not change, the ones that change between o and a, and the ones, for example, ending in er, also very common, that add a to the word. And for example, we also have cantor, singer. How to build the feminine? Cantora. But there's always a but. There are also plurals, and I changed color now so that this doesn't get too confusing. So there's the definite article for masculine and feminine, but this sentence could also be said in plural. And I'm going to erase the pen because I need space. Let's try to transform this sentence into plural. Os, okay, so we switch the article to plural. Os livros são bons, grandes e castanhos. So apart from having to change the verb conjugation here, because it now doesn't refer anymore to one single object but to plural objects, then you would have to switch to são. The rest, everything has to change. And the most common situation is to add s to the end. That's what happens to the article. That's what happens to the noun. This The ones ending in M, drop the M and add NS, the same as you have here, for example, with the indefinite articles. Uns, when it transforms to plural. Grandes, add S again. So grande does not change according to gender, but it adds S to plural, so it has a plural form. And castanhos. So the most common situation is to add S to the end to form plural. Then you have some irregular, well, I wouldn't say it irregular, they're not irregular, but different types of situations where you have different types of plurals. For you just to have a quick idea, for example, blue, azul, words ending in L transform to plural by adding ES. Also pastel, like pastel de nata, pastéis. Then you also have a lot of words ending with R. Cantor. So, and these transformations, they work for nouns and adjectives. Cantor, here, singer, ending in R, adds ES. Cantores. And then I will also add here bom, the ones ending in M, drop the N and add N and S, bons. So let's consider these the most common ones. Then you still have probably one or two options more, but o to a as masculine to feminine, that's the most common situation. And from singular to plural, then that's the S. That's the most common situation. But then you also have these possibilities. Muito bem. Let's see if we have questions. Okay, we have a question. Woo! That's probably the first question in forever. What happens to and when the noun is plural? So Gary asks this, and you mean a plural noun like, let me see. Can't think of one now. Can anyone think of a noun that refers to plural things but has a singular article? I can't think of any right now. I can only think of all words that you can transform to plural, even nouns that refer to plural quantities, so to speak. For example, if you think about water or coffee or the sea, well, the sea is obvious. But I'll think about it and I'll come back later and add an example to this question because I can't think of anything right now. Because I think castanho. Well, Gary, can you explain a little bit better what your question is? Because now I'm not sure if I understood it correctly. So I'll give you time to maybe rephrase that or ask it differently. I'll continue, but I'll be sure to come back to your question, if that's okay. And okay, so let's continue. Okay, let's talk about the third verb. I'll continue with red now. Looks nice. Estou. That's the verb estar. To be. Again, you have here a second verb to be. I already mentioned before the verb ser. Let me take this away from here. The verb ser that also means to be, but refers to permanent characteristics like your name, your nationality, your profession. This verb to be refers to momentary characteristics and where you're at. So a place that is not permanent. For example, you as a person, you move around. You're not nailed to the floor, so you move around, you're mobile. So you use this verb when you want to say where you're at that moment. If you talk about, for example, buildings that do not move around, then you need to switch to the verb ser because it's a permanent place. It's not going anywhere. So think of ser as permanent and estar as momentary. Okay, so verb estar. Again, you see the personal pronoun is gone. In this case, the verb estar is being used to say that he is at home. Estou em casa. This is the preposition in, and this is casa. Just to mention, in case you're wondering why casa has no article, sometimes some nouns are used without articles, and casa in this sense refers to home. So when you refer to casa, which can also mean house, when you refer to it as home, then you drop the article. That's why the preposition is alone without any article here preceding casa. But if you say the house is big, then you have to say a casa é grande. Then the article goes back. Oops. Casa é grande. But talking a little bit again here about the verb estar, also irregular. Like I said, these three verbs I'm talking about today are irregular. And I'm talking about here in terms of location, but you could also it could also refer to how you are feeling at this time. For example, you're tired. Estou cansado. And this is talking about Pedro. That's why it ends in O. I am tired, or I am happy, or I am sad. Triste. Estou cansado, estou triste. So characteristics that are not permanent. So you're tired now, but after your sleep, you'll be feeling good again. So you use the verb estar. You see this one ends in E, so it would not change if I were talking about a woman. Ela está triste. She is sad also, so in this case, it does not change. But just for you to see the difference, imagine that I say using the verb ser. Let me just add the verb here. Estou cansado, estou triste. Imagine that you use the verb ser in this case. Sou cansado. You would not really build the sentence like this, but so that I can make a point. Sou cansado, sou triste. Because you are using the verb ser, because it's permanent, refers to permanent characteristics, this means that you are a tired person in general. He's always tired. He's a tired person. He's a sad person. That's part of his personality. So in this case, you switch back to the verb ser. But like I said, you wouldn't really build the sentence like this. You'd probably say, eu sou uma pessoa triste. I'm a sad person. But you get the idea between these two verbs, estar and ser. Muito bem, let me check back again if anyone has any questions. Muito bem. Okay, so let's move on. Hope you're not asleep. So, and the same sentence continues then to say, and I am studying English. Here I'm already going into different structures. So far we have been conjugating the main verb in the present because I am Pedro, I am at home, I am a student. Here we have the verb using an auxiliary verb. So we have two verbs here. The verb estar that you've just seen, estar, and the verb estudar that uses the infinitive in this case. So when you want to say, I am studying, I am doing, something like in English when it ends in ing, that means you are referring to what stuff you're doing right now at this precise moment. And for this, you use this structure that we use a lot. That is estar, estar, plus a, plus infinitivo. That's the infinitive of the verb, of the main verb. Basically, that's the action you want to refer to, study. Infinitivo. So estar in this case is being used as an auxiliary verb. It has no meaning, no actual meaning. The meaning is in the infinitive. And when you use this structure, you refer to things you are doing right now. This, for example, is different in Brazilian Portuguese. You would say estar plus gerúndio. That would be estou estudando. Estudando. This ending here, you can identify it as being gerúndio. And this basically means the same thing. It's just that these structures are used into different places, basically. So here in Portugal, we use estar plus a plus infinitive, and in Brazil, you use estar plus gerúndio. But they basically mean both. They refer to something that you're doing right now. These three verbs, ser, estar, so both verbs to be, and then ter, they are the verbs I chose to talk to you about today, not only because they are the verbs that you usually start with, but also because they are the ones you're always going to be using as auxiliary verbs in many, many different structures and tenses. So these are the three ones that without them you can't really say a word. Muito bem, and moving on. Let me just check. Muito bem. Sentence 7. Eu sei falar inglês muito bem. I know how to speak English very well. So here I start to talk to you about other verbs that are used as auxiliary verbs. So you have two verbs here again. This again is the infinitive, infinitivo. So the verb as you would find it in the dictionary. And this is the verb to speak. And this is the verb saber. To know how to do something or to have knowledge about something. And this is so there are many, many structures you can use only by conjugating a few verbs that are used as auxiliary verbs and then using the main verb in infinitive that will allow you to say many, many things. Probably you could just speak Portuguese by using this type of structures. But obviously you don't want that. You want to use everything. But this is one of these situations. So where you have one auxiliary verb, it's like a modal verb in English. Auxiliary verb and then infinitive. Muito bem. In this case, we are talking about adverbs here, so they do not change according to gender. They always remain the same. Muito bem, very well. Muito mal. They tend to be more or less flexible in terms of placement in the sentence. So you could put them here, for example, eu sei falar muito bem inglês, but there are some adverbs that you can only place in a certain place, either before or after the verb. But generally speaking, I think probably 80% of them you can use them here before the complements or at the end of the sentence. Similar structures to this, you have, for example, this next one. So, também quero aprender francês. I also want to learn French. Here again, you have two verbs. You have the infinitive and you have the auxiliary verb. In this case, is the verb to want, querer, querer. And then to learn, infinitivo. You have many structures like this. This is querer plus infinitivo. It's the same structure like we saw in the previous example, saber. Then you will have other types that use prepositions in between the auxiliary verb and the infinitive, like I have to do something. Then again, you use ter, to have, plus de, plus infinitivo. I have to do something. So some of them will also use a preposition here in between, but you already see that there are several possibilities that you can do with this type of structure. An auxiliary verb and then infinitive. Infinitivo. You get the point. Também, also, you could put it at the beginning, or you could switch places. For example, you could say, quero aprender francês também. So again, like I said, these words they are a little bit more flexible in terms of, not like the personal pronoun, then the verb, and then in terms of adverbs, you can place them more or less freely. E o último exemplo, the last example. Amanhã vou comprar livro de francês. Tomorrow I am going to buy a French book, or a book of French, if you translate it literally. Tomorrow, amanhã. Again, like I said, these words, these time complements, you can put them at the beginning of the word or you can put them at the end. Amanhã vou comprar um livro de francês. Vou comprar um livro de francês amanhã. Vou comprar amanhã um livro de francês. So they are pretty much flexible. You can put them wherever you want. Again, here, the personal pronoun is gone. So what do we have here? You already know this, you know this, you know how this works. Again, you have another structure using an auxiliary verb in this situation. You have the infinitive, to buy, infinitivo, and then you have the verb to go, ir, conjugated. So the auxiliary verb always has to be conjugated, and then you use it with the infinitive. Here is another example, and this one is really useful because you can express events that are going to happen in the future by using this structure. And this does not have to be the immediate future, it can be anytime in the future. In 10 years, vou comprar um livro de francês. So I'm going to buy a French book in 10 years. What I also want to tell you is that you also have different tenses that you can conjugate in the future. So there is the future tense. But if you're just starting, this will be really helpful to you, this type of structures that use an auxiliary verb and an infinitive, because you can express many different things. You can also talk about the past using similar structures like this. You cannot use it for all types of situations, obviously, but already gives you flexibility to be able to say something if you want to. Muito bem. And that's it. Let me try to switch back. Whoops. Technology. Okay. Hola, I'm back. So this was just a quick overview. If you have any questions, and Gary, I'm really sorry if I didn't understand your question. Please let me know if you want to rephrase it or anything. Okay, was just checking something out. Just for you to have an idea how the language works, so it's important to know the genders, the plurals, that verbs have conjugations, that there are a lot of these structures where you have auxiliary verb plus infinitive that allow you to express many different types of situations. And also about the personal pronouns, also important to know that you can omit them from the sentence because the conjugation of the verb already expresses who this action refers to. So that's it. Well, no questions. Oh, thank you. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but I will just say it. Bangvat Borkar. I hope that's not too far from the truth. Thank you so much for your nice comments, and I'll see you again anytime soon for a new workshop about some other topic. But I hope this was already useful to you, and that you could learn a little bit already today. So anytime, if you have any questions, you can always send a message. You can always go to the site and send an email. You're always free to do that. So I'll see you again next time. Tchau, tchau. Até a próxima.